decades, the frequency of natural disasters have steadily increased, affecting hundreds of millions of people caught off guard by the intensity of the calamities, many of which are weather-related. The fury of the planet is on full display, with no end in sight. Evidence points to the reality of a world that is quickly changing. It is seen and felt every day, even though some remain in denial that the Earth is experiencing changes outside of the usual norm. An example of this can be found in Greenland. Disturbing photographic evidence shows that Greenland is cracking apart, displaying an intertwined series of widening ice fissures. What's happening here is a perfect example of the dramatic changes that have been ongoing in the past 3 decades. And the evidence can be seen in the images from this area. Just 25 years ago, the ice sheet, which covers 650,000 square miles, was mostly stable. But since 2002, it has been losing, on average, close to 1 billion tons of ice every day, which, if measured in gigatons, would be the equivalent of 215 billion tons of ice that is lost in a calendar year. Even more alarming than the melting of the ice sheets is that researchers who have been on recent expeditions to Greenland's interior have discovered a new pattern behind the mystery of the disappearing lakes. What they discovered is that the lakes are draining much further inland in a cascading chain reaction, which is enabled by a vast interconnected web of cracks below the ice, which continue to get wider. What's happening here is basically a domino effect, where one event leads to another. In this particular case, the draining water surges away from the lake and then destabilizes nearby ice beds. The destabilization leads to new cracks, which then begin draining more lakes, and the reaction intensifies on a daily basis. A recent observation saw that 124 of these lakes drained in the span of 5 days. Even lakes that had formed many kilometers inland were vulnerable to this so-called chain drain reaction when new fissures began appearing in the ice. So these observations warn us that billions of gallons of melted ice are plunging below Greenland's surface on virtually a daily basis. Some of the water is trapped in the ice sheet, but much more of it escapes into the surrounding ocean. What this means is that the Greenland melt is becoming a major concern, as future generations are likely to experience sea level rise along coastal cities, where high tide flooding could become a continuous headache for heavily populated regions. According to a 2017 report, ice loss in Greenland was responsible for about 25% of global sea level rise in 2014, which was up from just 5% in the year 1993. This then is further proof of how quickly changes are happening on Earth. The melting of Greenland is on full display. The evidence is overwhelming. But if you can't see the forest for the trees, then you end up lost in an endless array of misinformation.